Right.
And then moving on to Zambezi.
Right. So I'm going to invite Deborah now to come and introduce the next topic, which is creating a more sustainable tannery by Arnold and Lindelby from Zambezi Tanners. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. That was great, Susie, and actually it leads us nicely. I mean, we started talking just not long after I set up the Sustainable Love Foundation, because we do feel quite strongly that communication is a big part of the work that we're doing, but also education and helping industry to understand how they can become more sustainable in a way that doesn't scare them. You know, you go back even 10 years and sustainability was just a vague notion, and some people used it for a bit of marketing. It didn't really mean anything very much. The vision behind the Sustainable Leather Foundation was so that we could have what we call an AIM approach to sustainability: accessible, inclusive and modular. And that's opened up a whole new way to think about sustainability for the leather industry. Before now, people were working at the top 20% of the industry, and it was very difficult for some of these high-producing, low-income countries to even get a handle on where to start when it comes to sustainability. And we wanted to change that. So it was really heartening, July time last year, when we started getting inquiries from some tanneries in Zimbabwe who were suddenly saying, how can we get involved? We want to have access to the international market. We want to know what we need to do as a tannery to improve. And it's like, great, this is just what we want to do. Now, I'm not going to talk about the foundation too much, but I do think it's important that you understand how that approach works before I hand over to Lindelby, who is going to take you through what they've done at tannery level to prepare to have an audit. And Lindelby is going to be joining us by video presentation in a few minutes. So we have a dashboard approach that looks at the three areas of sustainability: environmental, social and governance. And it works on a really simple traffic light system. So it's transparent at first glance to everybody. If it's grey, it's not assessed yet. We haven't started that evaluation. If it's orange, it means it's work in progress, but they're not quite meeting the standard yet. If it's green, they're meeting the standard. And if it's red, they're failing the standard. If it's red, it's more likely to be that it's something regulatory, permits that they're not able to meet, discharge parameters that are falling outside of regulation, something of that nature. Otherwise, if it's just that they're still not quite there yet, it will be work in progress. And this is a much more effective way for any tannery in any region around the world to start working on improvement and to see this as a real improvement mechanism. In addition to that, when we think about transparency, we need data. For us to communicate to the public and to the consumers, we need to show data in a transparent way. So we don't hide anything behind any complicated scoring mechanism. We clearly show how the tannery is performing or how the product manufacturer is performing, because I think that's another key element. It's not just tanneries that make leather. We have chemical companies, we have machinery companies, we have abattoirs and slaughterhouses. We have the farming to take into account. We have no leather without the raw input material. So all of these things come together, but then we need to show what the actual impact of that production is. So what is the energy consumption? What is the water consumption? We do need to have averages depending on the type of material and depending on the process that's taking place in a facility. A full service tannery is going to have a very different consumption to just a finishing plant. So you have to be able to have different averages for different types of process. But by giving this information here in a transparent way, we're not making a value judgment on it. We're saying this is what it is. But now for a brand, if they want to be able to talk to their consumers and say, I know that my value chain have reduced their energy consumption by 5% in the last 2 years or 10% in the last 5 years, they can prove it. The metrics are there, the measurements are there, and the history of that improvement is also visible. Let's look at Zambezi. This was where they started back in August last year. This was our starting position. It's a grey dashboard. It's visible, everybody can see. But what they can also see is that they have a dashboard and they're now starting to work with us. And I'm not going to steal Lindelway's thunder because she's going to go through the process of where we're at. But then I want to take you through to November. And this was their interim position. A little bit of context, they are an exotics tannery. And so on the governance spectrum, you might not be able to see the detail on this, but actually some of these areas on this governance wheel at the end, animal welfare practices and traceability, they were already a step ahead when they're preparing for that because they're dealing with exotics. So they have to comply with CITES regulation, they have to have veterinary services in place, and they have to have a host of things that bovine tanneries don't have. So they're ahead of the curve in some elements. They also know they're behind the curve in other elements, particularly on the environmental spectrum. But they now have a mechanism by which to improve. And we have regular update sessions with them in order that we can help them to prepare themselves to do the work and understand the work that they're doing at tannery level. And I think just to show you how it looks on the dashboard, as if you click on any one of those sections individually, you get that little box at the side that tells you where they are in their journey. So it gives you, again, that little bit more understanding of where they're at, what their progress is, and what they still need to do. We put next steps down. Now, if this was that they passed one of these sections, you'd see on what basis we give that that pass award. And that makes it inclusive because we allow for anything that they have with anybody else. So they don't have to have an audit just with the Sustainable Leather Foundation. If they've had an audit or an ISO certification, an E-Check certification, any tannery around the world, whatever they've already got in place can have that mapped over the dashboard first, and then you can plug the gaps. So it makes it accessible by you as well. And I think with that said, I'll hand over to the guys to upload the video presentation from Lindelway, and we'll let the guys at Zambezi talk to you a little bit more about how they've been working with us over the last 9 months.
Just trying to get the connection signal.
Okay. I should say, while we're waiting, we're hoping to go in July and do the first audit with them. And at that time, we're also going to do some workshops in Zimbabwe to maximise the time and help to show the other tanneries in the region and the area that they can also get on board and do this.